Hey, fourth graders, it is math time again. Our math lesson today is 10.3, fractions and decimals. The learning target, I can write tenths and hundredths as equivalent fractions and decimals. Before we get into our lesson, let's go over some vocabulary that you need to know before we start. So, fraction form. So that means any numbers as written as a fraction. So for example, let's do 5/10, 25 hundredths, 2/3. Those are all in the form of a fraction. Next, decimal form. This is what we've been working on all week. So let's see, 0.55 23 hundredths are all examples of decimal form. Let's do one more. And 200ths written as 0.02. Now, equivalent fractions, you may or may not remember. I hope you remember this from when we were working with fractions a few chapters ago. So let's just take any fraction. I'm going to pick 5/10. To make an equivalent fraction or a fraction that is equal to that, you can multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So I'm just going to pick 10. So whatever I do to the numerator, I must do to the denominator. So 10 and 10. 5 times 10 is 50. 10 times 10 is 100. So 5/10 is the same or equivalent to 51/100. It doesn't even matter what number I chose. I could have multiplied it by 1,000 or even 3, and that would give me fractions that are equivalent to each other. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. So let's get into some problems that you will see in your work today. So let me see if I can move this out a little bit. All right. Maybe like this so we can see the whole paper. There you go. All right. So let's write 6/10 as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. So right now, 6/10, obviously, it's in fraction form, but we want it to be in the hundredths form, right? In the hundredths place. So let's just shade in what 6/10 looks like with this model. So that would be everything 1, 2, 3, 4. It'd be all of these columns. Here's one column. I'll try to do this fast so you don't have to watch me color in all these columns. 2, 3. Oh, pretend I'm doing it neatly. 4, 5. Oh, didn't mean to do that. And 6. Okay, we'll pretend it's all nicely filled in. All right, so 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 10. 6/10. All right, now we want to find an equivalent fraction in the hundreds because now this square is divided into 100 parts. Let me show you something. What if I put it right underneath that? Can you see that I can just take my highlighter and I'm going to go ahead and shade in this first column to make it match my model above. Isn't that the same amount? But instead of being divided into 10 parts, this is divided into 100. This is one column. This is one column, but this is divided into 10. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to color in or shade 6 columns like I did at the very top model. 4, 5, I think that's 6. Make sure I shade that. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. Look what happened. I have shaded in the same amount. The only difference is the squares are smaller. Okay, so now I'm going to put them side by side here, and we're going to go ahead and write. I already wrote 6/10 equals, instead of 10 parts, it's now equal to 100. But we have to think, how did we get from 10 to 100? What do we multiply that by? Think about it. 10 times what equals 100? 10. So we're going to multiply the top number by 10 and the denominator by 10. So it went from 10 to 100, and from 6 here to 60 there. And we just found our two equivalent fractions. 6/10 is the same as 60/100. Let's put it in the place value chart. Move it up like this. All right. So 6/10, let's see, tenths. That's in tenths, so we only need to fill in one space in this column, in the tenths column. It would be 0.6. Now, to put 60/100ths in the place value chart, it would be, let's see, point, right? And if there's 2 zeros on 100, so we need to put a number here in the tenths and here in the hundreds, two places that we have to fill in. So it would be 0.6, because we actually shaded 6 of these columns. 6, that's 6/10, but we do not have any leftover squares, so that is 0. And that's 60/100ths. All right, let's go ahead and do some problems. Let's just go ahead and cover this up. Let me grab my pen and let's get a little closer. All right, write 9/10 as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. Okay, that's kind of like we did in our example. So 9/10 is the same as we want it in hundredths. So let's think, how did we get from 10 to 100? By multiplying by 10. So we do that to the top and the bottom, and it equals 90. All right, so now we need to write 90/100ths as a decimal. That would be 0.90, 90/100ths. Number 2, write 0.20 or 21/100ths as tenths in decimal form and fraction form. Oh, so now we have to go from hundredths to tenths. All right, so let's go ahead and do it. So 0.2, like that. And now that's the same as 20/100ths, right? Yes, right, 20/100ths. So now we need to make it into tenths. So I'm going to put 10 here. All right, so let's figure out what our numerator is. So if we can go 100 divided by what gives you 10, or 10 times what makes 100. So let's do 10 divided by 10 to get the 10. And whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So let's divide the 20 by 10, which is equal to 2. So now we have it in fraction form. And how would we write 2/10 as a decimal? Well, we have only 1 0, so we only have to fill in one space after the decimal point, and that's our numerator, 2. 0.2. Let me just rewrite it, is the same as 2/10, which is equal to 20 over 100. They're equivalent, which is equal to 0.20. Those are all equivalent. They all are equal. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Write the number as tenths in fraction form and decimal form. Okay, write it in tenths. So we want to say 80 over 100 times blank, and that's going to give us tenths. Actually, we're going from 100 to 10, so that would be divide. All right, how many tens are 100, or 10 divided by what makes 10? It's 10. So whatever we do to the denominator, we must do to the numerator. 80 divided by 10 equals 8. Now let's put it in decimal form. 8/10, there's 1 0 in the 10, so we only have to fill in one space or one column after the decimal. That's our numerator, it's 0.8. So here are our two answers, 8/10 and 8/10. You would actually say them the same way. That is 8/10 and that is 8/10. All right. 50 over 100. So we need to write in tenths. So it's let's see, go like this because we want to figure out how we got from 100 to 10. We're going from 100 to 10, so we're dividing. Divided by what? It's divided by 10 to get 10. So whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Divide that by 10. 50 divided by 10 is 5. How do you write that as a decimal? 0.5. Here are your two answers. And the last one, 0.30. Okay, so 0.30 is the same as 30 over 100, but we need to make it into tenths. Again, we go from 100 to 10, so do we divide by 10 here and divide by 10 here, which will give us 3. So 0.30, 30 hundredths is the same as 3/10, which is the same as 0.3. So here are the two answers for that problem. All right, let's see if we can do a few more. Write the number as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. So we're going from 10 as a denominator to 100. How do we get from 10 to 100? Multiply by 10. Multiply by 10 and you get 20 hundredths. Write that as a decimal, 0.20. There's your two answers. 0.7, that's the same as 7/10. And then how do we get it to 100? We multiply by 10, and that's 70 hundredths. There's one answer. Let's write it as a decimal, 0.70. 2 1/10. Okay, so we need to, I'm going to leave that 2 alone for right now, and I'm going to say 100, like that. We'll put the 2 in front. 10 times what makes 100 times 10, and 1 times 10 equals 10. So 1 times 10 equals, 10, and so it's 2 and 10/100ths. That's it as a fraction. And then how do we write that as a decimal? It is 2.10. There you go. Write the number represented by the point as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. All right, so let's see, 0 to 1. Let's see how many parts there are between 0 and 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, there's 10. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 4/10. Now, how do we write 4/10 as a decimal? 0.4. All right, let's do B. If this is 0.4 or 4/10, 6, 7, 8, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9 out of the 10 parts. And in decimal form, it's 0.9. C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, so this is 1 6/10, which is the same as 1.6. All right, let's see if we can do the very last part. Mixed number decimal. Okay. Mixed number decimal, fraction notation, decimal notation. All right, 20 plus 3 plus 7. Well, that's 23 and 7/10. There's our mixed number, 23 and 7/10. As a decimal, 23.7. Decimal notation. So we're going to copy our whole numbers, 20 plus 3 plus 0.7. All right, or 0.7. I guess we can leave it 0.7. All right, let's figure out what the mixed number is. 10 plus 8 is 18 plus 2/10, because 0.2 is 2/10. 18 and 2/10. As a decimal, 18.2. And I think we're going to finish